Good afternoon. Let's do some business. In fact, we're doing it live right here, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business with a news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air right here, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and you're on demand, Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. What a week, huh? Well, coming off the presidential election win by President Trump and the biggest post-election rally for the stock market in 128 years, in which we saw the Dow pop 1,500 points yesterday. It gained more than 400 points on Election Day. Today, the Federal Reserve taking the spotlight and lowering the benchmark short-term interest rate by another quarter percentage point, lowering short-term borrowing costs for consumers and businesses. Stocks bouncing around today, but closed mostly higher again, with the NASDAQ popping higher into record-high territory with a closing gain of 286 points. The S&P 500 came in for a closing gain of 44 to a new all-time high. The Dow slipped a half point at the close to 43,729, putting it just a half point below its all-time high achieved just yesterday. The yield in the 10-year note, meanwhile, moved to 4.34%. Crypto's in the spotlight. Bitcoin continued to rally to record highs today, right now just below 76,000. President Trump is seen as the first crypto president and expected to be business-friendly and pump up the economy. Stocks did tick higher today after Fed Chairman Jerome Powell took the spotlight after the Fed announcement. They released a statement on the economy as well as the decision on interest rates, cutting the short-term rate again, and then he held a full-blown news conference. He said he would not resign if asked by President Donald Trump if he was asked once President Donald Trump is back in the White House. Fed officials made tweaks to the inflation language of the policy decision that appeared to be less dovish than the last one. Tesla stock, meanwhile, continued on a roll, closing up more than $8 to just below $300 a share. EV makers have been in the spotlight lately. Rivian posting a larger than expected quarterly loss and revenue that were below expectations. It looks like the stock is up about 2% in after-hours trading. Lucid slightly beating Wall Street third-quarter expectations as the EV maker cut costs ahead of plans to begin consumer production of a new SUV by the end of this year. World leaders reacting to the election of President Trump for a second term as leader of the free world with serious geopolitical hotspots, including the Middle East, Israel, Iran, Ukraine, Russia, North Korea, and China. China's leader reportedly called President Trump to congratulate him. This as President Trump has stated he plans to impose tariffs on China, reciprocal with what the Chinese impose on U.S. products. I'll discuss that and more later this hour, live with China expert and Gatestone Institute senior fellow Gordon Chang, author of numerous books on China, including his latest Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. Aside from the presidential election this week, the other big election on the ballot here in Los Angeles was the contest for Los Angeles County District Attorney, which was won by veteran prosecutor Nathan HOCHMAN, who defeated soft-on-crime incumbent District Attorney George Gascon. The new L.A. County DA-elect, Nathan HOCHMAN, will be joining us live right here later this hour. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, the Fed, crypto, President Trump, and the whole works now. Joining us live, John NAJARIAN. Dr. J, as he's known on the major financial networks, co-founder of Market Rebellion, financial commentator, options expert, co-author of his latest book, It's Not an Option. Learning how to trade options is no longer an option, it's a necessity. He also has the laser eyes on, too, following the cryptos closely. Sounds like we got the right guy on the line here now. John NAJARIAN, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Oh, it's always great to speak with you. And, Frank, I was speaking at a crypto conference in Miami this morning, and a Web3 property rights conference, tokenizing properties and things like that. And now I'm at the New York Stock Exchange. I had to step away from the bagpipes because there's a charity called Building Homes for Heroes that we support, and Liz Clayman and a bunch of your friends here in New York support this charity vigorously, along with Lowe's, by the way, LOWES, the stores that help people build homes and so forth. It's great to be here for that, and I just wanted to mention them because the homes that they build, there is no mortgage on them. They give the homes to the heroes, the people that are coming back with life-changing injuries from these many wars that we're in. hopefully we hear a lot less of these wars going forward. That's, I think, every American's hope. But it's a fabulous night to celebrate these very generous folks that are giving their money and time. So I'm delighted to be here with you as well. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much, John NAJARIAN. We are there with you in spirit, and our salute to the combat wounded and everyone you're trying to help there with new homes, building homes for heroes. That sounds wonderful, and I want to get more information about that, certainly. But what an epic week, and you've had an epic day, it sounds like, at that crypto conference, which, of course, on a day in which Bitcoin at an all-time high, and, of course, the Trump trade is on. Give us your reaction to this epic run-up for the stock market this week and the huge run-up we've seen in the cryptos, too.
Well, you're exactly right. And I was lucky enough to be, like I say, down there in Miami with Michael Casey, definitely an OG in the crypto space. The group of folks that were gathered down there from MIT, Harvard, and all over Europe and so forth, and Asia, were pretty interesting. And they certainly believed, as I do, that this administration, being the first new administration to ever support crypto, means it's going to be a pretty bright future. Doesn't mean every day is going to be up, up, up and away. Certainly has been that for a couple 48 hours or so now. But I think we'll see an awful lot of folks gravitating towards crypto now that they have a friendly administration to it. So that's something I think that all of the crypto aficionados knew, but people that are just in regular society might not be as focused on that there has never been, since Satoshi Nakamoto or whoever it was created Bitcoin, there has never been a supportive administration, and now we have one. So I think the future is so bright we got to wear shades.
Fantastic. With laser eyes on, of course, as always. And let me ask you this, John NAJARIAN, with President Trump considered the first crypto president, we've seen a lot of wild predictions as to where Bitcoin goes from here. Have you just adjusted any of your predictions on where it goes from here?
Well, I didn't know that he'd get the entire mandate that he got. So, yes, I have adjusted mine, and it would be more like 150, 175,000 at this time next year. So, in other words, about $100,000 higher than where each coin, each Bitcoin, that is right now. And the reason for that optimism is that so many institutions and annuities, everything from endowments to big institutional trades, now will have, I think, a clearer path and a justifiable one to say, hey, this is supply and demand. There's a very limited supply, and thus we think that this could go significantly higher. I think that's reasonable because I'm a supply and demand guy. Doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. If you believe that demand creates higher prices unless it's met with much higher supply, it's being met with lesser and lesser supply. That's why we do these halvings with the cryptocurrencies. In other words, the rewards that are given out to the miners are less and less each time they do one of these halvings. In other words, it loses half of the reward to those miners. So you're not getting as many coins out. Thus, the price point for these coins should be going up if you have a broader embrace of crypto in general and you have a limited supply. Well, again, prices should be rising, and I believe they will.
On the air live with John NAJARIAN, Dr. J. And let me ask you this. What about Ethereum and the other names in the crypto world? Doge, of course, took the spotlight on election night, hitting the highest we've seen in quite some time, up around 22 cents. Even Doge got a pop this week at 19 cents here right now. But what about Ethereum, which, of course, also had those ETFs put into place this year? And anything else that you're tracking that's getting your attention?
Well, certainly Doge, because, again, Elon likes touting it. He didn't create it, but he loves touting that one. and Department of Efficiency.
Government efficiency.
That's one of the, government efficiency. He loves to put these acronyms together and match them up with his Doge. And I'm sure Donald Trump will let him do it after all the support he gave him. So I would think that Solana, Ethereum, Propy, Propy, are the ones that I've been buying in the last 48 hours in addition to Bitcoin. And I think for those that don't trade ETFs as much but do trade stocks, I'd say Coinbase, MicroStrategy, Mara, which is Marathon Digital, Riot Blockchain. Those are all part of the ecosystem that I think benefit from this new crypto-friendly administration.
If Bitcoin does go to 150,000, would you sell it then?
At that level, I would lighten up some, but I am really a buy and hold guy when it comes to Bitcoin itself. Some of these others that I've named, like Propy, like Solana, like Ethereum, I'm willing to trade those. They have much larger supplies. Doge in particular is a massive supply. But Bitcoin only will have 21 million Bitcoins in total when they finish, and that'll be 138 years from now, based on the mining that they're able to do for that particular coin. So I think that means, again, limited supply, more massive demand that grows by the day. I think that means I should just hold on to Bitcoin.
Aside from the inauguration of President Trump in January, is there anything else on the horizon that could move the cryptos? Any halving events or anything else? Any more ETF talk or anything else that's imminent? What was discussed at the conference there today, for example?
Well, I think we're going to hear a lot more when we say property rights. Certainly, people have looked at hotels. The St. Regis, for instance, in Aspen is tokenized. So in other words, people can own pieces of that by owning that token. But I think you're going to see a lot more assets in the ground. When we talk about blood diamonds and so forth, you're talking about a laser-etched marking on a diamond, for instance. I'm not saying that this tokenizing does away with that, but you can imagine, given the cobalt and manganese and lithium that need to get pulled out of the earth for these batteries, whether it's BYD batteries, whether it's Tesla's batteries or Panasonic's or whomever, all of that needs to have basically a provenance of where did it come from? Was it from some poor woman with a child on her back working in the Congo in a giant pit, which would be more or less the equivalent of a blood diamond or a blood lithium or a blood cobalt? Or was it something that was derived out of seawater, for instance, which some lithium is derived out of that, or whether it's on the ground in Peru or in Afghanistan or wherever? I think people are going to be demanding where did this particular rare earth mineral come from? And that's going to be a big thing going forward. Provability for that is one of the things that might lead us towards that tokenization of those assets so that you know this one did come and you're able to trace it all the way back. It did come from a legitimate spot, not from slave labor in China, not from, again, some poor woman getting 25 cents a day with a child on her back as she's picking away at the ground to try to unearth some lithium and so forth.
On the Air Live with John NAJARIAN, you mentioned Elon Musk in the context of Doge. Tesla, of course, also getting a lot of attention. That stock's been on a roll, more than $8 today to just below 300. And it appears the Trump trade is on. We've been following your social media feed closely. And of course, Wall Street cheering the election of President Trump this week. As far as the Trump trade is concerned, what's getting your attention?
Well, in that space, clearly the dollar, in the short term anyway, and the president-elect won't be able to do much about that except jawbone about it until he is seated as the new president, the 47th president. So I'm not so much thinking that he can weaken the dollar. He would, of course, like a dollar that was weaker only because it allows us to export more. But right now, the dollar is extremely strong because the rest of the world knows that more or less the United States is back. The United States is competing aggressively under a Trump administration. Hopefully, we don't have to enact those tariffs that we both speak of all the time. But if China has a tariff on our vehicles going into China, on Mr. Musk or Lucid or Rivian or whatever it might be, or General Motors or Ford or, any of the vehicles that might be going into China from the U.S., we have to have that same sort of that reciprocity, if you will, that if you tax ours, we're going to tax yours. And unfortunately, that has not been done since President Trump left office. And the threat of those tariffs is probably one of the reasons that Xi Jinping reached out to the president, probably to negotiate rather than just experience a tariff that might cause production of China EVs to drop dramatically outside for the exports outside of China. And I think that would be a good outcome. I don't think tariffs are something any of us really want to see, but I do think that you have to basically have a level playing field. And right now it is not. If they're taxing our exports into China and we're not taxing theirs, we have to equalize that or they win.
Given the election and the Dow and the other major averages hitting record highs in reaction to this, Bitcoin at a record high, and you having the unique experience of having just been at a Bitcoin crypto conference in Miami and now at the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and it's always a thrill to be there. I've always felt that, and I'm sure you feel the same right now. What is the mood at both of the places that you interact with all the folks there today?
I think people that it was probably a minority, but the minority of folks that were at the crypto conference that weren't huge fans of President Trump were nonetheless realizing that he is, like I say, a very crypto-friendly president and will probably put forward a crypto-friendly administration. It won't be Gary Gensler heading up the SEC or the person that he puts in charge of the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. I think both of those will benefit from having people there that President Trump has vetted and that he believes will support the sort of development that now has been pushed offshore. I mean, Coinbase, it's wonderful that Coinbase is still here onshore, but the Winklevi and a number of other big crypto companies have left our shore. They've gone to Malta, they've gone to Dubai, they've gone to Zug in Switzerland, and they will not come back. Once they leave, it's too easy for them to stay offshore and basically pay no taxes and all the rest. That's not the result any of us want. We'd rather have the innovation and the jobs here, and that's, I think, what he brings to the party.
Speaking of party, you got a big event there on the New York Stock Exchange benefiting Building Homes for Heroes. I just pulled up their Instagram page and we'll be looking for your feed tonight on that wonderful event. Anything you'd like to say about that group tonight where giants such as yourself in the financial world have gathered to support combat wounded veterans and others?
Well, we're all blessed to have brave men and women. I just saw a beautiful, relatively young woman walking around in a very fashionable dress. And then when you look down, you realize that she has one leg and the other leg is an artificial leg because of an IED. To have her be able to walk around a house without ramps and without other things that would allow her to move about as freely as she is now able to would be a terrible thing. And yet there are thousands of people with stories like that that are even in much worse states. But the good news is that these guys, buildingHomesForHeroes.org, they provide the complete home for these wounded veterans that is able to accommodate lack of eyesight if they lost their sight. It's able to accommodate wheelchairs and other means of transportation if that's what's required for paraplegics or even quadriplegics and so forth. And they do it with absolutely no cost. The founder, I was talking to him at length tonight. He has never taken a dime for doing the work, God's work that he does. And they've built over 390 homes for these veterans, and not a single one has a mortgage. They deliver the home completed to them, ready to go, fully equipped with what's necessary for that person to live their best life with a very challenging injury that they've incurred basically doing our bidding overseas.
That's wonderful, John. Well, thank you for sharing that. And again, the website is buildinghomesforheroes.org. Hope our listeners join in supporting you in that event there tonight on the New York Stock Exchange floor. And we'll be looking for your updates on Instagram, on an X, formerly known as Twitter. John, thank you very much. We'll let you get back to what's happening there and hopefully speak to you many more times here with all the exciting things going on. John NAJARIAN, Dr. J, as he's known in the major financial networks, co-founder of Market Rebellion. The book, by the way, is It's No Longer an Option. John, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Of course. Thank you very much, Frank. Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you very much. And out to the freeways we go here in Southern California on 790 KB. Mottek On Money continues 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Mostly winning day for the stock market again today, with the Dow slipping just a half point from its all-time high following yesterday's 1,500-point closing gain following the election of President Trump this week. The Dow down a half point at 43,729. The S&P 500 at 44 to a new all-time high at 5,973. The NASDAQ gained 286 points at 19,269. The yield in the 10-year note now at 4.34%. The volatility index, the VIX index, the so-called Wall Street Fear Index, slipping 6.5% today. Gold up $6.50 to $2,712.30 an ounce. Crude oil down 19 cents, $72.17 a barrel. Checking the cryptos now, Bitcoin continued on a roll today, hitting all-time highs just below $77,000. Bitcoin right now down about $675,983. Ethereum down 9 at $2,885, and Doge, which popped this week, right now at 19 cents. Taking a look at NVIDIA, the so-called Magnificent One, up more than $3 now at $148 and change. Now the latest news here in 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good afternoon. World leaders reacting to the election of President Trump for his second term as leader of the free world, with serious geopolitical hotspots, including the Middle East, Israel, Iran, Ukraine, Russia, North Korea, and China in focus. China's leader reportedly calling President Trump to congratulate him. This as President Trump has stated plans to impose new tariffs on China, reciprocal with what the Chinese impose on U.S. products. Joining us live now, China expert and Gatestone Institute senior fellow Gordon Chang, author of numerous books on China, including his latest Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. Gordon Chang, thank you very much for taking the call on this epic week, and give us an update now on what's happening with this reported call between the Chinese leader and incoming President Trump.
Xi Jinping made that phone call. I'm sure that he was almost in a panic when he did, because Trump has been talking about across-the-board tariffs on Chinese goods of at least 60%. That's important for Xi Jinping because his only means of rescuing the Chinese economy is to export more. He needs the U.S. market, and a 60% across-the-board tariff would end his dreams of rescuing a grave situation at home.
What would that do to the Chinese economy, the global economy, and what it would mean? What would it mean for consumers and business here in the U.S.?
For Xi Jinping, if he were shut out of the U.S. market, would have to sell much more to the European Union, which looks unlikely because they've got growing trade spats. He would then have to look at what he calls the Global South. But Global South countries are already starting to erect tariff barriers against Chinese goods, as we've seen in places like Indonesia, Turkey, and even Brazil. So that leaves Xi with very few options.
Looks like the so-called Tesla of China NIO, which was a Wall Street darling for a while, has been stuck in the mud down to about $5 a share. What's going on with some of these Chinese names that are traded here on the New York Stock Exchange? And with President Trump coming in, I know there was a lot of discussion already years ago about maybe reining in some of these offerings here on our markets. What are you hearing about that?
Well, Chinese EV manufacturers who dominate the world are making losses at home. And the reason is that the market is saturated. So they've got to sell abroad. Now, President Biden has proposed rules that would essentially bar Chinese EVs from American roads because of software and other aspects of those cars that would pose a surveillance risk, that Chinese cars would be able to surveil the United States, transmit the information back home to China. So it looks like, for various reasons, those Chinese cars will not come into the U.S. There's another reason which hasn't been imposed yet, and that is the Tariff Act of 1930 prohibits the importation into the U.S. of any goods made with forced labor, and almost every Chinese green product is made with some Uyghur forced labor.
On there live with Gordon Chang on the X, formerly known as Twitter, by the way, at Gordon G. Chang. We're also following this interesting story related to China involving a top pharmaceutical company executive. In fact, China, the AstraZeneca top China executive has been detained by authorities in China. I believe it's a British citizen, right? What do we need to know about that story that's in the Financial Times?
China's pharmaceutical sector is very corrupt in a very corrupt country. So I wouldn't be surprised if AstraZeneca engaged in something that broke Chinese law. But the point is that all pharmaceutical companies almost certainly break the law in some way. And what Xi Jinping is doing by picking on a foreign company is trying to reserve the sector for Chinese state enterprises. It's considered to be a high-tech sector. Therefore, Xi Jinping does not want foreigners in it. And so we're going to see more attacks on foreign companies, whether in the pharmaceutical sector or otherwise.
All right, and China's close ally, North Korea, now sending troops to Russia, putting their troops in Russian uniforms and fighting for Russia against Ukraine. Any updates on what's happening on that front?
It appears that Russia is not using the North Korean troops very well. These are North Korea's best troops. They're special forces. And if they were allowed to fight in their own units, they would be very effective against the Ukrainians. But the Russians have more or less filtered them into Russian formations. And the North Koreans, at least from the early accounts, have taken heavy losses, as have the Russians. So although these are really good troops, they're going to end up being cannon fodder unless Russia changes its tactics.
And with President Trump coming in, what dynamics do you expect to change on all of these fronts at this point?
Well, President Trump has made a number of promises of being able to settle the Ukraine war quickly. I'm not sure that he'll be able to do that because the Russians are going to give him a very difficult time. I think that essentially it's not just a President Trump question. I think the United States is coming to the realization that we face a coalition of China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. And so I think that there's going to be, whatever President Trump thinks now, I think we're going to probably have a much more Reagan-like policy because we're being mugged by reality.
And anything else on the radar screen? Might China take advantage of the situation here during this transition? We're still watching what's happening in the Taiwan Strait with recent military maneuvers involving mainland China around Taiwan and so forth. Any updates on what's happening there?
Yeah, it's been quiet for the last week or so, as has the South China Sea. It's my guess that we are going to have quiet for some time. And the reason is that Xi Jinping does not want President Trump to go ahead with his promise of across-the-board tariffs. So I think the Chinese are going to give the new president a wide berth. I suspect, I'm just guessing, but I suspect we're going to have a period of calm with China.
We'll continue to follow this closely with you. That is Gordon Chang, China expert, Gatestone Institute senior fellow, author of numerous books on China. His latest is Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. On X, formerly known as Twitter, he's at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Frank. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And out to the freeways now on 790 KABC. Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Now, with the U.S. debt at more than $35 trillion and climbing, not to mention the Biden administration getting us involved in costly wars, developing the digital dollar's central bank digital currency, and inflation spiraling out of control, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets, like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement and the market and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and, yes, silver. Give Joe Morgan a call now at 1-800-753-8534. Mention Frank Mottek, and you can get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. The number to call, 1-800-753-8534, or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Aside from the presidential election this week, the other big election on the ballot here in Los Angeles was the contest for Los Angeles County District Attorney, which was won by veteran prosecutor Nathan Hochman, who defeated soft-on-crime incumbent District Attorney George Gascon. The new L.A. County DA-elect, Nathan Hochman, is on the air with us live right now. Mr. Hochman, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon, and congratulations on your election victory this week.
Well, thank you very much, Frank. It was a terrific win for the whole team, and really appreciate you having me on.
That's wonderful. Well, deputy DAs, police chiefs, prominent L.A. business people, including Rick Caruso, business groups all over L.A. County supported your candidacy. What's your message to the folks here this evening?
So my message is that we're going to have the DA's office get back in business. That for the last 4 years, we've been living under George Gascon's pro-criminal extreme policies that basically have said that juveniles can steal just under $950 and nothing is going to happen to them. That people who use a gun can do it in connection with a violent crime and the gun enhancement won't be used. That if you're part of a gang and you, as part of that gang, you commit a violent crime, the gang enhancement won't be brought. I'm not going to substitute these extreme decarceration policies with mass incarceration extreme policies. Both sets of policies don't, basically accord for the facts and the law. I'm going to replace them with a balanced, hard work middle approach, because you've got to do the hard work of looking at each case individually, the defendant's background, the impact on the victim and the crime committed, to determine who the true threats are to our public safety. Those are often the repeat offenders who need to be behind bars and the ones that aren't, for which a proportional non-prison alternative may very well be the solution.
Speaking live to the L.A. County District Attorney-elect Nathan Hochman, in addition to your election, the Prop 36, the passage of Prop 36 happened this week as well, rolling back provisions of Prop 47. Tell us about the significance of that and how it will impact your work.
So I was very glad Proposition 36 passed. I supported it because it's going to give the DA's office some additional tools to go after, in particular, repeat offenders. Basically, thieves out there who've not committed that crime once, twice, but 3 times now can actually be held guilty for a felony and put in state prison if the judge elects to do so. Same thing with people who engage in very addictive and dangerous narcotics, methamphetamine, fentanyl, and heroin. Again, that third conviction can mandate treatment, and also gives additional tools to go after fentanyl poisoners. I think these additional tools will send a message to criminals that the DA's office, again, is back in business, no longer emboldening them to commit more and more crimes, but saying, look, these laws will hopefully deter you from committing the crimes in the first place, because there will be real consequences on the other side of the line.
Has the pendulum finally swung here then in Los Angeles to give the streets back to the people?
I think it has. And the reason I say that is that in our hyper-partisan world, I ran as an independent against a Democrat, but I ended up speaking to ultra-left liberals, independents, conservative Republicans, Black, white, Latino, Asian groups, community organizations, neighborhood associations from all over this incredible county. And even though they don't agree on a lot, safety is that crossover political issue in 2024. Because everyone, no matter where you come from, is concerned about their own safety and their family's safety. They want to basically be able to go back to their car and not have it robbed. They want to go back to their home and certainly not have that broken into. If they own a store, they want to have some consequences, proportional consequences for people who might come into that store and steal under $950 or engage in a smash and grab robbery. And I think what's happening in this election is people got fed up. And they basically said enough is enough. And they want a DA with 34 years, as I do, of criminal justice experience as a prosecutor and a defense counsel who has this hard middle proportional accountability approach and will focus on deterrence to actually tell would-be criminals don't do the crimes, or else these consequences will be real and they will be applied.
On the Air Live with Nathan Hochman, the incoming Los Angeles County DA. Remember when I moderated the debate of all the candidates, including you, sir, at the United Chambers of Commerce event in the San Fernando Valley. At that time, the news had come out that shoplifting was up more than 100% in Los Angeles over the previous year, and people were sickened about that. Also, the catalytic converter thefts, which led to the death of someone in downtown Los Angeles, an actor, which we finally made some arrests there, and sickened by this revolving door situation where someone can be arrested 4 times and be on the streets and to continue. Is this finally the turning point here, especially for businesses who've been suffering so much?
This is the turning point, and I'll tell you why. Many businesses have gone to law enforcement when they've suffered some harm that they've experienced, and law enforcement has told them that our hands are tied, that the DA's office will not prosecute a whole bunch of crimes that they've been experiencing. Well, I'm here to tell law enforcement their hands are no longer tied, that if you go ahead and bring good cases, and I mean beyond a reasonable doubt level of evidence, with legally admissible evidence, the DA's office will give a fair shot to every one of those cases, so that victims and victim store owners will now understand, and victim businesses, that if you dial 911, not only is someone going to answer the phone, but you can get justice for the harm you suffered. And that is the message that we will take across LA County. And that message will not only be received by store owners and businesses throughout the county, but ultimately by criminals who right now think that they can get the Gascon special. That's the get out of jail free card. And that's the life they've been living for the last 4 years. Well, come December 2nd, that life will be over, and we're going to be back to a proportional accountability system.
Huge congratulations to you, and look forward to many more conversations. We wish you all the best in your important work, and thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank, and thank you for taking such a great interest in criminal justice as it affects the business community, because getting that word out is so important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll have an open line to you. That is the new Los Angeles County District Attorney-elect, veteran prosecutor Nathan Hochman, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here. Mottek On Money, 790 KBC.
Hey, it's Rich Eisen here. Join me and my compadre, Chris Brockman, every Monday on the Overreaction Monday podcast.
Rich, Jameis has taken the Browns to the playoffs.
Dude.
Why can't they win 7-8 games to finish the year? Why not?
I'm not saying there's no why not, but this is a definitive statement that's clearly an overreaction and is perfect fodder for a show like this one. I appreciate you coming out of the gate hot. Come react or overreact with us. Overreaction Monday, wherever you listen. It's game over.
Over, man.